Hey guys, welcome back. If you are new here, I'm Allison. This is the third video in the OCD series. So if you have not watched one or two, please go watch them first. What we're going to be doing now is going through the questionnaires that I had a few people so kindly fill out for me. There were 3 people who were willing to do this, and I really appreciate it because, again, I think that it's very important for us to understand the vast differences in experiences that people have. I mean, it's easy for us to say, I have that too, and to just assume, but it's so different for everybody. So let's get started. So the first questionnaire is by VV. When asked, how old are you now and how old were you when you were diagnosed? They said currently 36, was 33 when diagnosed. When asked, are you in therapy or are you medicated? They said both, but also have other diagnoses. When asked, what are your worst obsessions or compulsions? They said obsessions. When asked, are you diagnosed with any other mental health disorders? If so, what? And do you find that they play a part in your OCD? They said, yes, I have bipolar 2, different from regular bipolar. PTSD, anxiety, and panic attacks. They said, if my home or wherever I am is very cluttered, unclean, or hoarder-like, my anxiety gets really bad, sometimes leading to a panic attack or anxiety attack. They are physically disabled, so it makes things harder because they can't clean and organize as easily as an able-bodied person. The question, how has OCD affected your life/family/friends? They said it can weigh a lot, mostly on me or my husband if my home isn't relatively tidy because it'll throw me into an anxiety or panic attack. When asked anything else you would like to share, they said people with disabilities need to have someone covered under insurance to help them clean and organize their home on a regular basis. Our quality of life would greatly increase. I can go off on a tangent about our medical health system and how it is failing so many people, and one of those things being people with disabilities and needing extra help. Nothing goes without needing to prove over and over and over again that you are in need of or worthy of this thing in your medical life. Our healthcare system is shit, and that also makes me want to touch on the fact that I understand that getting access to therapy is a huge privilege, something that not everyone has. Not everyone has insurance, not everyone has the money to do this. So I understand how fortunate I am. I do want to let you know that there are many resources out there for people who can't afford it or don't have health insurance. If you go on psychologytoday.com, you can find therapists and psychiatrists, and some of them, before my phone so rudely cut me off because of storage issues, I need to get a camera. I was talking about the drop-down menu on the website, and it allows you to pick and narrow it down by all these different things, one of them being financial means, sliding scale, things like that, whether or not, you have insurance. And I also currently donate to the Loveland Foundation with 2 of my pieces of art, and I would like to start being able to donate to people directly who also need help being able to gain access to therapy. So hopefully I can do that in the next couple months. All right, the next questionnaire is from DV. It said, how old are you now, and how old were you when you were diagnosed? They're 25 and 21 when they were diagnosed. When asked, are you in therapy or are you medicated? They said, yes, I see a therapist bi-weekly and I take Wellbutrin. I also see a therapist bi-weekly. I used to see her weekly. She's fantastic. And if you have experienced a less than great therapist situation, find a new one. I'm telling you, having the right therapist is the most important thing. And when you find them, it's gonna be great. When asked, what are your worst obsessions or compulsions? They said, weighing myself, locking the door, making sure everything is locked. I go check several times. Even after I just checked, I stay up and wonder if I've locked my car doors or bedroom door, windows, any entrance. I have things kept in its place, even a little 3 inches to the wrong position, and I notice. I can't eat until I've completely cleaned the kitchen after cooking. I have to shower twice a day, sometimes even 3 times a day. I don't let anybody lay in my bed. Constant obsession on what I eat. My closet hangers have to be 1.5 inches apart. Color coordinate everything. Once I start cleaning one thing, I continue to deep clean everything else. I have to keep a specific routine to the dot most days or it will cause a type of anxiety. My workflow has to have minimal changes or I'll obsess on why it changed. While mine was never this intense, there are a lot of aspects of this that I dealt with myself, and it's hard because, you know, writing that down in those ways, you don't realize unless you suffer from it that it fills in all the gaps. So, you know, you say like making sure everything is locked. Well, until you've moved on to something else to think about, that is what's consuming this entire space. So that's hard. When asked, are you diagnosed with any other mental health disorders? If so, what? And do you find that they play a part in your OCD? They said eating disorder, anxiety, and depression. They think that they all play a vicious cycle in their life. If it's not one, it's another that spikes it. So when asked, how has OCD affected your life, family, and friends? They said, I had 2 manic episodes in 2016 and 2017 that really almost killed me. I never reached out for help because I didn't want to feel like a burden. I was severely depressed and the meds I was on had my OCD at another level, to the point I was doing reckless things and would also start stealing. It says streaking, but I know that meant stealing. I'm sorry. Stealing from my mom and sister. For the most part now, and with therapy, I have been able to get the appropriate help and fix the medication I'm on. Overall, there are days that are really bad and days that are really good. So that makes me want to talk about 2 things. Don't ever feel like a burden. I know it can feel like so much, and I have often been in that place to feel like a burden, but if you need help, the people who care and love about you want to help you. People don't always know what to do, what to say, how to help, but I think that being able to come together to communicate like, hey, I don't know what this means for me, but I need help, is honestly just enough to open the door and make that happen. So please, please, please don't live in your head alone. I mean, so while talking about it is great and people feel less alone in knowing that other people deal with it too, when you're in your head, it is the loneliest place in the world. So unless you're sitting there and talking to somebody about what you're experiencing, you're in that completely alone. And that's more than anyone should have to deal with. So please speak up. I know it's hard. If you have to write a letter to tell somebody, if you have to write a text message and then send it and be like, shit, I didn't want to do that because you wanted to, but you didn't want to. Do the thing. The other thing that this gets me on is them saying there are really bad days and really good days. I stopped having expectations for myself for my days because I felt like I was setting myself up. Like, so much as like me decide, I had no idea that today I was going to do this video. But in the past, I would have been like, all right, well, when I get home from doing this thing, or later today, I'm going to, and then I felt too tired or just not feeling it, and I'd rather do another thing that I need to do. I felt let down. And so, you know, not every day is good. And not every day do you want to do these certain things. And I don't think that it needs to be that way. I don't think it's about like holding yourself accountable and pushing yourself. When you're suffering from mental illness, like none of that gets to be a part of this. Like, you don't get to be shamed. And, you know, I hated the feeling of the rug being pulled out from under me for feeling like I had this really good day and now like this is what I want to do tomorrow and this is how I feel, and just kind of setting myself up and then having a bad day. Having no expectations meant I'm going to live in this moment. I'm going to enjoy that I'm having a good day. It's great, but tomorrow might not be great, and that's fine. That's okay. Because when tomorrow happens, I'll deal with that. But right now, I'll do this. And not try to fill your day with so many things either. Do what you can, but don't overexert yourself too, because that's going to then be a reason that you're, you know, not having a great time the next day. So, anyway. When asked if there was anything else they wanted to share, they said, you aren't a burden. And if your family loves you, they will help you and support you. Ask for help and accept it. There's life beyond our diagnosis. It's so true. And, you know, there were so many times where my mother didn't understand what I was going through, and she would maybe read an article, or I'd send her an article and be like, this is kind of how I'm feeling. This kind of, like when you read something and you're like, oh my God, this makes sense. And then you can share it with somebody else. It's sometimes easier than even using your own words, but she has come to try her hardest to understand how I feel, where I'm coming from. And I think that that's really great, because not everyone is going to be able to understand, but they still love you. They still want to help you and support you in the best way that they can. So it's maybe not going to look exactly as you want it to, but trying to understand what it's like to have something like OCD is very challenging, and we need to understand that too. The next questionnaire is from KM. When asked how old are you now and how old were you when you were diagnosed, they are now 34, diagnosed at 25. When asked, are you in therapy or are you medicated? They said medicated, did therapy for a while. When asked, what are your worst obsessions or compulsions? They said, pulling out my own hair all over my body all of the time. Intrusive, repetitive thoughts. If I stop thinking about this sick person, they will immediately die and it will be my fault. 1000% many feelings on that. Very, almost, I don't want to call it superstitious feeling, but that's like, I had a lot of like, if I don't do this thing, you know, rituals, lots of rituals. So when asked, are you diagnosed with any other mental health disorders? If so, what? And do you find that they play a part in your OCD? They said CPTSD, anxiety and depression. The worst of any of those is OCD. When asked, how has OCD affected your life? They said, my stomach is scarred from pulling out my hairs, so bikinis are off the table. I need you to know that you are beautiful, and having scars does not mean that you don't get to put on a bikini and enjoy your body and enjoy yourself, and just be glad that you're here. You, of course, get to do whatever makes you most comfortable, but I want you to know that that does not make you any less human and worthy of wearing a fucking bikini, okay? When asked anything else you want to share, they said, no, thank you for your interest. I love your YouTube videos. Thank you. You're awesome. The next one, this is from SB. When asked, how old are you now and how old were you when you were diagnosed? 35 and 35, just a couple months ago. When asked, are you in therapy or are you medicated? They said in therapy. When asked, what are your worst obsessions or compulsions? They said intrusive thoughts about past traumas, terrible things happening to people I love. When asked, are you diagnosed with any other mental health disorders? If so, what? And do you find that they play a part in your OCD? They said ADHD, depression, anxiety, and PTSD. They all feel related. When asked, how has OCD affected your life, family, and friends? They said, it's really hard to be present or engaged when I'm going through a period of constant intrusive thoughts. I withdraw, am easily agitated, and overprotective. Man, if you can't turn that shit off, I used to be like Samuel, and I would be in the car and he'd be talking and I would turn to him and be like, hey, can you repeat that? I didn't hear anything that you said. Like, I had to make myself very consciously aware, and him simply starting to talk did not grab my attention because my brain was going off and thinking about 15,000 other things, and I could not just focus and be present. So, and you know, some of these things I forget that I experienced because I'm so fortunate that I'm not dealing with that anymore. I don't know how many times I'm gonna say medicine is the reason. Medicine helped me then be able to do more and do better and heal. But trying to come down from it because of sweating about a year ago, my OCD was immediately worse. So I can't come off of it. Not right now, maybe not ever, I don't know. But I wouldn't say it's a crutch. I would say it's absolutely a tool. And and it's just making everything a lot better, you know? And because of that, I've been able to have the better mind to be able to heal myself more. If that makes sense. When asked anything else you want to share, I've always had quirks that made me think of OCD, but I didn't think much of them because they didn't really impede my ability to live my life. Symmetry or balance are triggers for me. If I'm running and my right foot comes down on a sidewalk seam, I have to adjust my cadence so my left foot does the same. I grind my teeth to the syllables of songs or TV dialogue and have to keep going until I do an even number of grindings on each side. It doesn't feel like the world is going to end if I don't. I just feel uncomfortable and can't get my mind past it. This reminds me again so much of some of the other things that I dealt with, and I feel them so much. When walking, a lot of those similar things, not splitting things like poles or whatever, not pulling through parking spaces because you're crossing over a line, volumes on TVs and radios, odd numbers only. 13 was taboo, but I got a Friday the 13th tattoo, and I got 13 written out tattooed on my leg, and it kind of forced me to like look at it differently. Our cat Max passed away on March 13th. My favorite baseball player was number 13, Manny Machado, before he left to become a tool on a different team. But there were a lot of things associated with 13, and I really wanted to change that for myself. Getting it tattooed was more just like setting that in stone. This is not a bad thing. This is not a bad number. This is not taboo. So that's an interesting little story. Cutting up fruit, cutting up apples had to be odd numbers. Cutting up strawberries, odd numbers. Same amount to me and to Sam. Counting out grapes. Certain fruit didn't matter, like if I just took a bunch of blueberries, that was fine. It's amazing what things mattered and other things did not. So I totally understand these little, what I say little, but they're huge things when you're in it of, you know, grinding your teeth in a certain way and, you know, symmetry and balance. Like, I have a huge thing with left, and left to me is balanced. Anyway, let's see. I have one last one, and this is from MG. When asked, how old are you now and how old were you when you were diagnosed? They said, I'm 34 and was diagnosed at 12 years old. When asked, are you in therapy or are you medicated? They said both. When asked, what are your worst obsessions or compulsions? They said checking, rechecking, picking at my skin, rewatching certain movies, repetitive phrases, and holding my breath. This one reminds me of not being able to read books, like getting to the bottom of a page and your mind has gone somewhere else entirely. You've thought of a bad thing, whole scenario of life, has nothing to do with what's happening. So I've been able to actually successfully listen to audiobooks while I paint, which is so cool. But a huge thing I did when reading, so she said checking and rechecking, I would turn the page, so in a magazine or on a book, and I'd see something and have to go back and look at it multiple times until I feel like I looked at it in full. that makes sense. So that kind of thing, or rewinding in movies. I have recently read that rewatching movies can be comforting to people rewatching the same shows over and over for people who suffer from anxiety, because there are no surprises. Totally understandable. I will get a short blurb of a song in my head, and that will continue on until it is replaced by another one. That same little 5-word part. I have my husband to blame for that. When asked, are you diagnosed with any other mental health disorders? If so, what? And do you find that they play a part in your OCD? They said bipolar 2, mania and extreme anxiety make for a roller coaster of a time. Having high energy and risky behavior goes against my need to have consistency and hide from everything. So I'm in a constant state of cognitive dissonance and sometimes disassociate. Imagine having racing thoughts that are damn near uncontrollable, and they are peppered with intrusive thoughts about children being raped and me hacking my family to death with an axe. It's extremely distressing and debilitating. I'm actually the nicest, kindest person you'd ever meet, and I'd never act on any of those thoughts. It hurts my heart to read the last sentence, because never in my life would I imagine that you were the type of person, I don't know this person personally. I don't, even off the initials, know who they were when they submitted. But I know how this works. I know how this plays in your brain, and I know that you didn't need to tell me you're the nicest, kindest person ever and that you wouldn't act on this. And I hate the feeling of needing to constantly defend ourselves from explaining our mental health disorder to people. But that is the reality a lot of the time. But it breaks my heart, because I know. When asked, how has OCD affected your life/family/friends? They said, lost friends due to not being able to leave the house to visit them. People perceive me as incapable of doing anything. There's a stigma attached that that allowed folks in my life to not take my feelings seriously. I've been constantly dismissed as crazy. Doctors have also largely ignored my medical concerns by saying it's psychosomatic, but it turns out my physical issues were not made up in my head. I've also lost a job due to my mental health. It's affected my kids, having to watch their only present parent suffer with this. There have been lots of tears and angry outbursts. I self-medicated with drugs and alcohol all through my teens. I self-harmed a lot to cope then as well. The lack of treatment and support led me down a rocky path that caused more trauma. People took advantage of me financially, physically, and emotionally. I endured multiple rapes, homelessness, domestic abuse, and more. The complex trauma I experienced added to the severity of my mental health. That's a lot to endure, and the fact that you are still here and still doing your fucking best is, everyone who suffers from things in their head that, again, it feels so lonely. Being ignored for medical concerns. I switched my doctors because my doctor would laugh at me. Like, oh my God, stop. A lot of the things, once you are told it's just your mental health, you're just making it up, you are like defeated immediately. You don't want to share with people that you have any kind of mental health disorder, because then that becomes the reason. And it can manifest itself in physical ways, but you are also very much able to have things that are physically wrong that have nothing to do with your mental health. You know, I understand that it can be a lot for people, but as outsiders, but I want everyone to know that if you need somebody, I'm here. I will do my best to be supportive and helpful and as much as I can actually give myself. So when asked anything else you want to share, they said the worst parts of OCD are the intrusive thoughts. I'd have horrific sexual thoughts pop in my head. I'd also have thoughts about murdering my family in gruesome ways. I couldn't drive without having repetitive thoughts of running my car into a tree full speed or running over pedestrians. I used to have to drive over a bridge to get to school, and I'd not be able to stop the thoughts and urges to act on those thoughts of driving off into the river. I checked myself into a mental hospital for 8 days to get treatment. There's also the issue of not being able to sleep either. Extreme anxiety and panic attacks were so bad I couldn't leave the house without Xanax. I couldn't touch door handles or elevator buttons. I couldn't hold hands with anyone, not even my children, without panicking. It's not easy to get treatment. There's lots of trial and error and wait and see times. Therapy was harder than anything I'd ever done before. I've been in weekly therapy for 5 years now, and last year my diagnosis was redacted. I don't have the disorder anymore on paper, but I do still take medication. I'm lucky to have a good medical, psychiatric, and therapist team, but I was 30 before I found them. I never actually wanted to die, but suicide looked like a peaceful relief after a while. Mental health is not all mental, and it's not just a chemical imbalance. Healing is possible, but I think the only way for me to get that was to walk through the fire of feeling all the feels, processing and repeating that process. I had to deal with my trauma and treat my body medically to override the physical damage of trauma and stress. It's nice to be on the other side of my illness now. And I think that is an amazing way to end this video. The trauma of relationships and childhood and everything that contributes to your mental health never goes away. You deal with it in therapy and you do your best to get through it, but those things will always be there in some way. And to overcome that is fucking amazing. To see yourself on the other side of a place that you never thought had another side is just fascinating to me. Because there was a time where I never thought I would be sitting here right now doing this. You know, it breaks my heart to think that it took until they were 30 before they were able to find this team of people that could help them. And I want to say the same for me because you know, I found my therapist, I think it'll be 2 years in August, and it just kind of fell into my lap. I got put on a waiting list. And when she called and was like, hey, I was in my car, so caught off guard, and I was like, sure. And I was like, oh my God, I just signed up for a therapy appointment, and that was like, normally I would have had to think about that, look at my calendar, and I was just like, okay, that was that was a lot. But I'm so glad I did it. And she happens to work at the same place where my psychiatrist is, and you know, who I've been seeing for guess a little bit longer than that, when I had decided to try and switch to Effexor. And you know, I look back and nothing would be what it is if I had figured this out sooner and all that stuff. But it would have been nice to have not had to go through this for so long, to have been better sooner. And, you know, I think we just need to really address the mental health care system, accessibility, and making people feel like they can go to therapy and talk about that and get out of work in order to go do that. I mean, I know that plenty of places allow you to do that, but I don't think a lot of people know that they can. And I don't know if all places would be understanding. But yeah. So thank you so much if you watched all 3 of these videos. I hope you learned something today, whether it was about me or about, you know, OCD, about yourself maybe, or just something else to learn in general, to see another side of people. So thanks so much for watching. Please let me know what you thought in the comments, and see you next time. Thanks, guys.